How's everybody doing? It's Cevan, aka the Monkas. Joined with me today is Reed and Tyler. This is episode 13 of Likely to Dispute.
We have another team breakdown episode today, but we got a couple of fun things to start here. We did have a semi-relevant trade go down in the league this week. Uh, Cam Thorne traded the great Javonte Williams, who we spent a lot of time last week talking about, to Mr. Andrew Sumner for his 2027 second round pick. Um, Savan, Tyler, do you guys have any thoughts here on the trade? Is it going to be relevant? Who won the trade? What do you guys think?
It's hard to say who won the trade, but I think those are two teams that, in our minds, are kind of on the cusp of being a potential playoff team. Granted, anything can happen, but I think in the short term, it hurts Camden, obviously, it helps Andrews. Who knows what that 27 second will look like. So I think I prefer the Javante side slightly, but it's pretty even in value. I think overall, just with those teams being right there, though, I think that you need any edge you can get to make the playoffs. So that does hurt Cam's team a bit, in my opinion.
Savan?
Yeah, and for me, I would definitely take the Javante side. I feel like right after that episode, we were talking about how Javante's kind of like a lottery ticket. Um, and with the 27 pick being two drafts away, and Camden like desperately needing running backs, that was kind of a questionable one from my perspective. But yeah, it could end up just being nothing anyway. So
Does this negate your hot take of him winning it all this year?
no, because that didn't factor in Javante really.
That
But
his championship was
What?
purely destiny based as opposed to team skill based
it was a good mix. It was off vibes.
vibes.
Can can win
So
a
obviously
champ
Javante didn't bring those championship vibes you're saying. So his
Correct.
losses of whatever.
Yeah. But
addition
with
by subtraction.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's just the whole fact that while I personally don't think Javante will be super like a high-end RB2 or whatever, but he still does have the potential to be the RB1 for the Cowboys, which has always proved to be a valuable role.
I guess I'm taking a different stance than you guys. I agree with what you just said. So for that reason, given that Javante the player is not the reason that we like him, I think I like Cam Thorne's side here. I don't think it's a bad trade for either side. Like I think for Sumner it makes a lot of sense given the state that his team is in as far as competing right now. To pick up some more running back depth for his running backs who, while have about as high of a ceiling as any room in the league, they're both older. So giving him some more depth is perfect for that trade. For Camden, obviously you're getting a second round pick and a second round pick for a team that didn't make the playoffs last year. Obviously, it's next year, but for him, I think this was a smash for him. Like honestly, if you were telling me the value of, let's just like for the ease of kind of comparison, just assume every pick in 2027 is like a mid-round pick. I feel like you could get a better player than Javonte Williams for a second round pick. So for him, like in the absolute worst case, if he needs help, I feel like he could flip that pick for a better running back than Javonte Williams. And like as we talked about last week extensively, I'm not a huge Javonte guy, but a situation is setting up to be good if he's able to take advantage of it. So I think I like the trade for both sides, but I definitely think if I were in Cam Thorne's spot, I like the move for him.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, mild trade there. Now we're going to jump into some of our more regularly scheduled content, but this week, instead of a question of the day, we've got a tweet of the day that I think is fun to talk about. Um, I saw this on Twitter and I thought it was really fun. And it reads, I love fantasy football Twitter because on any given day, I can stumble onto a tweet that hypes up a player that I already really like, and it makes me feel good inside when my priors are confirmed. And when I see something that I don't agree with, I can ignore it and forget that I saw it, and it makes me feel good too. I don't know about you guys, but I follow and take in a lot of content on fantasy football Twitter. Nothing pisses me off more than people saying to sell Anthony Richardson or someone saying that, one of my players is, not is a sell candidate, is overpriced, whatever it is. Nothing annoys me more than that, and I'm great at ignoring that stuff. But then anytime someone says this is the time to buy Anthony Richardson stocks, or this is the year that Josh Downs breaks out, or Rashee Rice is undervalued, I just like smash the like on that, and I love interacting with that because, it makes me feel good. So I thought this hit really close to home for me. I don't know if you guys can relate, but I thought it was fun.
Yep. For me, the first name that came to mind. So along with being on like fantasy Twitter, I'm on Bears Twitter, so I see a lot of positive Rome stuff, so I can relate there. And then for the negative side, um, it's a lot of like Travis Etienne, which Travis Etienne and Michael Penix, which I see a good 50-50 on both of them, but I definitely ignore the negative and agree with the positives.
Yeah, I think I resonate a lot with this, especially this time of year as well. A little sequence of events here. A few weeks ago, I see the official Browns account tweeting out a video of Jamari Thrash doing a touchdown dance. It's like, damn, I wish I still had him on my team because he was on my practice squad, but I cut bait with him before the rookie draft. So I picked him back up, dropped Demario Douglas, who we all listed as droppable on my team. And then like a few days later, see Mike Vrabel hyping up Demario Douglas, talking about how he's a grinder and he looks strong, he looks good out there. I'm like, damn, like I got to pick up Demario Douglas again. So I pick him up and drop DeAndre Hopkins. So I do fall victim to that Twitter carousel and trying to get all the players I see good things about.
Yeah, I think you made a good point too. Like this time of year is just rampant with this. Like anytime, like you saw, anytime Jamari Thrash makes a catch, there's gonna be some account that hypes him up. And earlier in the year, like pre-rookie draft or closer to this season, when we get even into training camp, like the content gets a little bit better. But man, this time of year is tough because again, you're hanging on to a Jamari Thrash OTA clip or something like that, or coach speak in June about Pop Douglas and like yeah, that happens, but yeah, this one hits pretty close to home for me, and I think it's probably about time I start moderating what I see on Twitter because I just don't. Not everybody out there is a high quality content creator, so you know there are some accounts that'll hype up every single player in the NFL at some point this offseason, and then the next year they'll try to go back and say that, oh, I last year I said this and this came true, so you should listen to me this year, and that type of stuff annoys me. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought this was a fun tweet that hit pretty close to home for me.
Yeah.
Definitely fun.
Okay, main portion of the week here. Sandy's team breakdown. Noted Packer enthusiast. Uh, Last year went 9-4-1 with that notorious tie with Deshaun, which was good for second in the league. Got him the first round bye. And then he was seventh in points scored, despite the second best record. So potentially a little bit of luck there. Um, for each of us, our power ranking tier, Cevan and Tyler both have him in the maybe next year tier, which is our first appearance of that tier so far in our team breakdowns. And I have him in playoff aspirations. So, Cevan, tell us why this isn't the year for Sandy.
Um, well, Tyler and I were talking last night and we kind of were just going everything while I was filling out everything and came across and we'll get into it later, but I really don't think that Sandy has any depth at all whatsoever, and it's proven that you need multiple multiple players that you're able to put in your flex or fill in on buys. And I think his starting lineup is like okay, but in my opinion, I don't see any depth, and so that the depth really separates the the top guys from the top half from the bottom half, and so that's why I have him in the bottom half.
Tyler, concurring thoughts?
Yeah, for the most part, not as harsh as Savon. I kind of waffled back and forth between these two tiers. At one point, I had him as playoff aspirations, but I think, like I said, talked to Savon last night. Just the depth is a big issue for me, and I don't think he'll win no games or anything like that. But I think, in my mind, best case scenario is a 500 team here, and I tend to think that the actual results will be somewhere below that, which is just kind of a maybe next year for me.
It'd be quite bold if you predicted him to win no games this year. So that would have
That's
been
true.
fun. I have him playoff aspirations. I generally agree with what you guys have said. I just think his high end, he has a lot of high end players. Sorry, he has a he has a normal amount of high end players that we'll talk about here shortly. And I think just the ceiling that he has alone is that of a playoff team. So I just, for me, the way I did my power rankings, I only had one team down in that tier, and that was just a team that I didn't think had the depth or the ceiling. And I think at the very least, when I look at Sandy's team, I see at least enough of a ceiling to say, I could see him winning 7 or 8 games. And if all goes right, I think I could see that. You can see down below on Keep Trade Cut, top 5 quarterback room, top 5 running back room, the number 7 wide receiver room, and then the dead last in tight end room, just below myself. But he does still have draft capital. He's fifth in draft capital, but he does have the second oldest team in the league. So to start going through the team accolades here, MVP, 3 different options here, probably the 3 highest end players that he has. Cevan with AJ Brown, myself with his quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and Tyler with Bijan Robinson. Tyler, why is Bijan his MVP and not one of the Eagles?
Yeah, I really thought about Jalen Hurts here, but when you think about Sandy's team, especially, and we'll get into the running back room. I think Bijan really plays a hero running back role here. I mean, last year he is um, top 4 in all-purpose yards. He only was behind Saquon Barkley for total touches last year, and he scored double-digit touchdowns. So, any worries of Tyler Algier sniping work from him, anything like that was kind of put to rest last year. And I think it's definitely possible that there's maybe just a little bit more in Bijan Robinson to have one of those all-time seasons, kind of like Barkley last year. I know that's really hard to project and put on a player, but I think in my mind, I still see just a little bit more from Bijan. And with him still being very young, I think that could, be this year or whatever. So I think at a position where it's not the strongest for Sandy. Bijan is just he's one of the few players on his team he can just start and every week and just be confident that he can score, something like 15 plus points a week. And so I think, with I really think about Saquon a lot last year and how that season was so huge for Deshaun and was Deshaun's MVP last season. I think Bijan could possibly have something near that, not necessarily the same level, but he has a skill set.
Interesting. 2,000 yard season prediction from Tyler right off the bat. Savan, AJ Brown, why is it him over his quarterback? Okay, I guess I will take it now. I'll go with Jalen Hurts here. A top 5 fantasy quarterback, has been for years. Tush push didn't get banned. The Eagles are still going to be very, very
Can
good. Most talented roster in the NFL. And I think
hello.
it's welcome back, Savan. I'll hit you back in a second. Uh, I forgot what I was going to say. It's
Tush
pretty easy.
push,
Jalen
yeah.
Hurts is really good. He's going to keep being really good. No reason to believe he won't be. Weapons are there. Offensive line is there. He's healthy. So,
Do you have any
yeah.
concerns about him as a passer? Because I know that's a little bit critiqued about him.
Yeah, he's not the best passer. I think he's a better fantasy quarterback than he is real life quarterback. But with the weapons that he has, and the fact that they're not relying on him to be a major volume guy, it's more of a can you be efficient? Can you get the ball to the guys you need to get it out to, and do that 20 to 25 times instead of 30 to 35 times a game? Uh, yeah, no, he's not the best passer, but he's in a perfect situation for his skill set and a coaching staff that uses him perfectly. And for fantasy, he's going to continue to keep doing what he does, and that's double-digit rushing touchdowns, which for a quarterback is elite. So, yeah,
I don't, so I don't know if this is irrational or not, and I don't have to get off on too much of a tangent on this, but when there's an offense like the Eagles where they've had, the same pieces, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Hurts, Goddard, minus Saquon, I sometimes get worried about like the league adjusting to them over time, and like I know that's talked about sometimes, but I just worry about, is what if there's a year where defenses really figure out these Eagles and that hurts. No pun intended, but I don't know. I don't know if there's any rationale behind that or me just being a hater.
I think it's probably you being more of a hater, but I see your point for the most part. But when they've been doing it for 4 years, like you said, I think this is
Yeah,
AJ Brown. This will be AJ Brown's fourth year. Devontae Smith's been there for 3 or 4 years. The O line is still elite. The defense is still elite, and that is a point of contention. Like when you have an elite defense like that, and you have the offense that they do, when you play in a lot of games that are blowouts, it's a lot of turning around and handing the ball off or missing games or not missing games, missing playing time late in the games because you're winning by so much. But at the end of the day, Hurts is a huge part of why they're up so big at that point. So, unless,
yeah,
his rushing touchdown output or rushing output starts to go down, the passing volume does not scare me or the passing efficiency, him as a passer.
sure.
Cevan, third time, AJ Brown, thoughts?
Yes. So AJ Brown, looking at 2025, he's obviously the wide one on the team. In a with the addition of Barkley, I Hertz had roughly 200 less attempts and only threw for around 3,000 yards. But with AJ Brown getting such a high target share, uh, I like him. Obviously, he's a great receiver, but I like him specifically this year. I'm pretty high on him. I tried to acquire him uh before acquiring T. Higgins. So I I could see a world where AJ Brown has his best season, scores a lot of touchdowns. If he stays healthy, he could definitely he has wide receiver one upside.
Hmm. Agreed
So
there. Yeah, I don't think there's any points of contention here for anyone's MVP picks. Three elite players that in redraft are going in the elite echelons of their positions respectively. So yeah, pretty straightforward, I think, for MVP. Most improved, three unique options here. Tyler, I think Keon Coleman is a bit of a controversial player, so why don't we start with you on him for most improved?
Oh man, it's it's so tough with Bills wide receivers because every year it feels like there's a guy that, people think, okay, this is now going to be Josh Allen's favorite target. I mean, you had that with Kincaid. I was in on Curtis Samuel, and I know Khalil Shakir was pretty solid last year, but I think with Keon Coleman, uh, he he had 500 yards last year, and I mean that was solid-ish. I think he is in a position to improve because he has another year under that belt, and I don't, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of grasping for words here a bit, but I think Keon Coleman was someone I really liked coming into the year last year, and as his season went on, he had some pretty solid games. Uh, in week 17, he had 11-point game, which I know is crazy, but I think he just missed a good amount of time last year, so he's still only 22, and so I think he has a real opportunity to improve here. It's it's less so about the numbers here for me, which I hate when people don't talk about numbers and they just kind of give rambly opinions, but I think Coleman is set up to improve here. I
Vibes based.
it's hard to explain. I'm I'm flustered here.
Okay, we'll go off you because I know Savan and I both have him for other categories throughout. So, Savan, another second-year wide receiver, Roman Wilson of the Steelers, vacated targets, a second option open. Is this I think he's going to be good, or I think he will improve on his zero catches from last year approach?
I think he will improve on zero statistics during his rookie season. Um, Definitely a cop-out answer, but in all reality, he has to be the most improved. Or he not has to be. He's the most likely candidate to be most improved, specifically because he had 7 snap percentage in one game last year and no
I believe
targets.
he played 5 snaps last year, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
So it recorded, I'm pretty sure they were all maybe probably all special teams, but didn't record a stat. So That's it. I don't think he's good or will be good, and I don't buy into the hype, but um yeah, he'll improve from nothing.
Bold take. He will catch a ball this year. I have Michael Pittman here. I have strong, as you all know, my opinions on the Colts are clear, but as we're sitting here recording on June 21st, I think it's fair to say that Anthony Richardson is not in the lead to be starting week one for them. In the event that Michael Pittman is healthy, which he is, as many of you may know or may not know, he had a broken back last year. And honestly, as someone who watched all the Colts games, he did not look very good last year. I was very unimpressed. This was the first time I really spent a lot of time watching him. But if you look at his stats prior to this last year, he's consistently a 1,000 yard or close to 1,000 yard guy with quarterback play that has been solid but not fantastic. I think the way that they're going to use him with Daniel Jones potentially is going to be much more effective. Again, now that his back is not broken, I think it's very easy to say that the Colts offense, even if it's Daniel Jones, whether it's Anthony Richardson, whether the volume's down and the efficiency's down, he only had 800 yards last year, and his catch rate was way down for obvious reasons. So I think there's a real potential here for a bounce back. He's definitely a guy that I would be targeting in a redraft league this year because of his price. I think he's just become massively underrated, but I'm also big on Colts pass catchers overall as a unit. So I'm just a fan. I think there's a bounce back here to top the 800 yards he had last year and get back to closer to 1,000 that he had been previously. So
It's interesting because haven't you also said before though that you think he's not a good wide receiver?
no, I think he's overpaid for what
Oh,
he
okay, okay.
for what he produces. Like I don't think he has a standout trait that really separates him. I just think he's good everywhere. But for what he's getting paid, which I believe he signed like a 5 year, $96 million contract, something like that, where he's getting paid nearly 20 million a year. And the other pass catchers the Colts have now, I mean, there's four other guys in that offense that are trying to get targets. That was more my stance. I still think he's a solid NFL receiver. And as I said, hopefully this year, without a broken back, he impresses me more on the field here. So,
Okay.
yeah, most improved, one flustered answer, one I think he'll catch a ball this year, and then one Colts pass catcher. It kind of sums us up pretty well. Sleepers, Tyler, your boy, Mike Gesicki. You've been on him for half a decade now.
Have
People are
I?
still sleeping on him? Oh, no, 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 sorry. No, that was Cevan. Cevan was a big Gesicki guy back in the day,
Yes.
Yeah.
way back in the day. So
Yeah.
now Tyler's in on Gesicki. Tyler, why is Gesicki a sleeper in the Bengals offense?
I think this is uh get Mike Gesicki is borderline like best value candidate here. Uh, but he was obviously kind of written off after his New England tenure, which is just 1 year. And then he kind of came on to have a really solid season with the Bengals last year, catching passes from Joe Burrow. The Bengals liked what they saw and they signed him to a 3 year contract. So that's not a contract they give to anyone. I mean, sure, he's kind of a journeyman tight end at this point, but he caught a lot of good targets last year. So he finished as tight end 13 last year, which is no slouch, especially tight end premium league. That's definitely a flex worthy player. And in that tight end 13 finish, he only had two receiving touchdowns, which were in the same week versus the Raiders. So, I mean, at the last 2 weeks of the regular season, he had 12 targets and 10 targets. And so, at this, even though Mike Gesicki, I mean, he's 29, uh, I think he definitely earned the trust of Joe Burrow here. And this is a player that I think is still being slept on just because he has been around for so long. And I mean, he's just kind of another tight end, but he's better than that. And, you know, when people like I feel like if you were to ask people Kyle Pitts or Mike Gesicki, a lot of people would say, "Oh, Kyle Pitts," because first round pedigree, younger, freak athlete, whatever. But I don't know. I think I'd take Mike Gesicki. I think I really like the offensive fit that he has with the Bengals right now. So I think he's still being slept on a bit and could be a starting tight end for a few teams.
Do you remember back in Deshaun's episode, we had the quick hitter question was Kyle Pitts top 12 tight end, yes or no? Did you say yes or no to that one?
I think I said no.
Because if you said yes, and you just said Mike Gesicki's a top 12 tight end, in which case I'm all in. I mean,
I don't
I
think
don't
that's
hate.
far off.
I don't hate this at all. Any piece you can get from the Bengals offense is going to be a valuable piece, and I just think he's more of a pick your week guy. And in, when we're not doing best ball format where your top scorers automatically play, I think he becomes a really hard guy to figure out when to start because you obviously know Chase is going to get his, Higgins is going to get his, and if those two are both in the lineup, there's room for a third pass catcher, but between him, Yoshivas, and potentially Jermaine Burton, you're probably just going to have to pick your weeks of when you actually play him. And you could get 3 points, but you could also end up with, an 18, 20 point week, but it's going to be hard to find which week that is.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree. Like I think by the end of the year, it's very possible to see him in like that 10 to 15 tight end range, but it might not be as standard of a production that you could be like, okay, I feel comfortable starting him this week. It's probably a little more of a scary start, but some
Yeah.
weeks he'll pop off and some weeks he won't.
Yeah. I just think about it, like big thing for me is just the 2 touchdowns in 1 week. So I imagine as he's been with the team a little bit longer now that maybe those red zone targets are a little more bountiful.
Hmm. For sure. Cevan, Tucker Kraft, uh, Packers breakout pass catcher last year. Uh, Sleeper. People are sleeping on him still. What do you think?
Yeah, so I was looking, and as far as redraft, he's tied in 15. And so he's not being drafted to be a starting tight end uh, on the regular. And so I felt comfortable putting him in the sleeper category. As far as Tucker Kraft himself, when he was drafted in 2023, he was drafted in complement to Luke Musgrave. And I think going into the year, it was Luke Musgrave that everybody wanted. And then by the end of that rookie year, with Musgrave not being healthy, he was able to establish himself. And last year, he finished top 10, only on 70 targets. He only caught 50 balls for 700 yards, 7 touchdowns. And then so it to me, it seems like maybe the community isn't as high on him as one would think. And I'm just, I guess, above consensus in 2025. I think he definitely has uh top five, a top five ceiling
Ooh.
finish. Um, with it being tight ends, that's not like we see spike years like we've seen from Janu and Joku, guys like that that can just crack that top five just on just 1 year. And I think he's got that ceiling. So
I
Hmm.
don't I don't think he does, but that's great that you do.
that's
Wow, that was brutal. I I'll just go here because all of us have him for best value. He was a 15th round pick in the inaugural draft last year. I'm also in on Tucker Kraft this year. I've been trying to contact Sandy about a trade, haven't been able to get through to him, trying to make something because I am a fan as well. I have similar thoughts to Savan. Um, a top 10 tight end last year on only 70 targets to put up 700 yards and 7 touchdowns is quality. And as the running joke goes with the Packers, there's really no clear-cut top pass catcher for them. And in a world where I am a fan of the Packers offense, or sorry, I think there's a world where Tucker Kraft becomes the go-to option for them, whether that be red zone only or all the way through, the offense. I am a fan as well. I was going to say something similar to Savannah. I also see a top five ceiling for him in the right version, the way the Packers are able to throw the ball a lot. Jordan Love is a little reckless at times, but that benefits his pass catchers in the way that he gets them the ball and is not afraid to push it downfield, and that helps someone like Tucker Kraft. So great value, perfectly fine pick for the sleeper for me because, like Savan said, he's definitely being drafted as a tight end too, despite finishing as a tight end one last year and overtaking the higher draft pick from his own draft in 2023. So I am a Tucker Kraft fan this year.
yeah. And just to touch on that one more time, if he gets 100 targets, I think he's the top five tight end. If he would have got 30 more targets last year, I'm not
Oh,
gonna look it up what he is now or what. uh, Okay, you talk. I'm gonna actually
I
look
was
it
just
up
gonna
real quick.
say, sure, you can
If he had
arbitrarily
300
give.
targets, he'd be a top five tight end
I
too.
know, but I'm saying like he played all 17 games. The
Yeah,
Packers just all they did was gave it to Josh Jacobs. And in a world where they throw the ball more and he's, let's say, the number two option and gets 100 targets, which I think is possible, then he's a top five tight end. And that's
I mean, you can think he's a number two target or whatever, but like his season was pretty evenly distributed. It's not like he started slow and then came on super strong at the end. Like he had good weeks in the first half and second half. So it's like, in my mind, I don't get me wrong, I still think he's the best value here in the 15th round, but I don't think top five tight end finishes his ceiling. I think that's a little too high in my mind. I think
Wow.
the ceiling is 5 to 10, like 5 to 8 maybe.
That sounds like it includes number five. So a top five
Yeah.
tight end.
Or I'm sorry, 6 to 10, six to
Okay.
ten.
Okay.
Okay.
Same,
I don't know.
yeah.
I just think because it's more of like projecting for me, and since he was able to handle the workload he did receive last year, I don't see why he can't continue to build. Um, from year one to year two, 30 plus or added 30 targets. So year two to year three, add 30 more, top five.
Some good
Fair enough.
Tucker Craft discussion. I'm a fan as well. So, Tyler, I think you're on an island here being a Tucker Craft hater, but
I'm
uh,
st I
as a Bears fan yourself, it's understandable to hate the Packers.
guess.
This was very poor hosting for me because now we have to go backwards. Yeah, because I didn't do my sleeper of Deontay Johnson. I should have done Cevan last. Rookie mistake. Deontay Johnson's my sleeper, purely for the fact that they're going to need pass catchers. He's gotten some camp hype, and his entire career, he has been a target earner. Whether that the quality of those targets, what he does after he catches the ball, if he even catches the ball, is questionable, but it's undoubtedly been a target earner throughout his career. They're going to need people to catch balls after Judy and Njoku, and I think there's a real opportunity for him to come in and take up targets. And take up, I don't know if is the right word, but I'm not expecting high-end fantasy production. But given the fact that um, I believe sorry, I believe he drafted him in a normal spot last year, but after the whole ordeal with the Texans and then the Ravens, like he was just kind of on a lot of waiver wires in dynasty leagues. So for me, basically, being free for part of the year, I think that he's could be a value that ends up being flex worthy at some point in 2025.
I don't know. There's just such a like, just a stink about Deontay Johnson and the way his season was last year and now being on the Browns. Like this is a disgusting sleeper.
It sounds like you're
Yeah,
still sleeping on him.
Oh, I'm sound asleep.
I don't think Deontay's going to be relevant ever again. Like he
That's
might have his
sad.
spike. He might have his spike weeks,
That makes
but
him relevant if he has multiple spike weeks.
spike weeks on the bench don't do
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't.
Okay, but being fantasy relevant means there's a consideration to put him in your lineup. And if he
Yeah,
spikes multiple times, he becomes a consideration for your lineup.
the way I'm thinking about it is he's going to be single digits and like once a month put up like 12.
That's not a
Yeah.
I
spike.
It's a spike from two. It's a 10 point
Yeah,
jump.
I think he honestly is at that point in the career where like OBJ and Julio Jones, where it's like they sign with the team, then get cut, and they get signed to another team, and people like make it a bigger deal than it is because of the name recognition. It's
I
like
think
that
you
to
just
to
compared
a lesser degree. No, no, no. I'm
you just
not
compared
comparing
Deontay
them.
Johnson to one of the greatest receivers of all time in Julio Jones
I'm
and one of the
s-
best young receivers of all time in Odell Beckham Jr. It sounds like you're in on him.
but this is like equivalent to like OBJ signing in Miami, in my opinion.
Or
Like,
D-Hop to the Ravens.
yes, like yeah, same vein, but like lesser
Yes.
Okay,
name.
let me look up how many catches do you guys think Odell had for the Dolphins?
When?
Last year,
What do you mean when?
Last year, like four is my guess.
I
Tyler, how
was
many do you
just
think he had?
18.
Nine. He had nine catches last year. How much you guys want to bet that Deontay Johnson has more than nine catches this year?
I'm sure he will. I can guarantee he will. But you know how many catches J Jahan Dotson had last year? Take a guess.
Okay, okay. You know who a good
Why
name
would you want to
is?
talk Jahan Dotson?
Oh, we'll
The,
get to him. Don't
Well, I
worry.
know we'll get to him, but
uh,
why? That's not even relevant.
good comp for Deontay Johnson would be Jarvis Landry.
Jarvis Landry, I mean PPR machine for the Miami Dolphins.
And then he
Uh,
went to a new team and did.
Who did he go to after the Dolphins? I don't even remember.
The
Saints?
Brown. He went to the Browns with Odell.
That's right. He was pretty relevant if I remember correctly. He had some relevant times with the Browns. Because I
Yeah, he
drafted, I was really in on Odell that first Browns year, and then or no, no, in his last Browns year when he got traded to the Rams midseason. That was sad. That wasn't a fun year for me.
Okay. I'm calling the Jarvis Landry 2022 Saints year for Deontay Johnson, which was 25 receptions, 272 yards, one touchdown.
That's
yeah.
fair. I think
I
that's a
could see
perfectly
him.
reasonable median outcome for him.
Yeah.
I, I could also see him being cut in training camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I will take the over on that, but I think that's a fair median outcome for him.
and that's not startable or considering
No, it's
startable.
not, but I'm saying he's a sleeper because he has the ceiling for more than that, is my
Sure.
point.
Finish is four.
Sorry, everyone. We were having some f more fun Tucker Craft discourse. And for those of you who don't know, our process involves stopping and starting recording, but we are having some more fun Tucker Craft discourse that Tyler was continuing to be a hater despite putting him on his best value. And Savan and I are saying, you're stupid.
Hey, well,
Tucker Craft is good.
sorry, I'm not glazing him.
Well, that would be a first for you not to glaze someone on the pod. So congrats.
We'll get there.
What would he have a top five ceiling if he was on Ian's team?
Oh yeah, for
Ooh.
sure.
At that point, he might be a bona fide top five tight end.
That's right.
Oh, sigh. Okay. Moving past best value. Overrated. Some familiar names here. Uh, by the way, as we're starting with Michael Pittman here, I messed up. His contract was 3 years for 70 million. So he was over that $20 million a year mark. Not the erroneous suggestion I had earlier. So Savan, notorious hater of all things Colts. Why is Michael Pittman Jr. overrated at his current cost?
First of all, that is a lie. I'm in on DJ Giddens
That's fair.
And Jonathan Taylor. Um, and Josh Downs.
Oh, you're in on
Uh,
Josh Downs. This is news to me.
yeah, just the player, not the situation.
That's fine.
Sometimes that's all you got to
I'll
bid
take
on is
that.
talent. But as far as Michael Pittman, like Reed touched on him earlier, uh, broken back. I don't think he's probably not overpaid. 20 anyone. That's actually pretty low for wide receiver ones now. But just the situation, the emergence of what's inevitable in Josh Downs, the top
Wow, he's
15,
inevitable now.
yeah,
I'm loving this Josh Downs glaze.
the the want to run the ball and then them using a top 14 pick on a tight end that's going to be short yardage, middle of the field. I could just see Pittman. Obviously, he's going to be a snap percentage leader. He's going to play all the snaps. But I could just see him falling out of the wide receiver one role. I could see him falling all the way down to the third target earner on the team. Um, yeah, just his game's not for me. He was fine for a couple years, wide receiver two for 3 years straight. He just doesn't have the upside that I would be looking for in what is his wide receiver two. And so I'm just gonna he'd be a guy that I would want to be either depth or a wide receiver four. I just don't like the role he's gonna have to fill for Mr. Goffdale ball hogs.
That's fair. I can't say I'm a huge Michael Pittman fan myself, but I think he's underrated compared to what his price is at the moment, is all, as I guess my take on him. Sorry, just a second. We're having some Zoom issues on my end.
You're all right. I'll
Uh,
talk more about Mr. Pittman. Um,
Talk more about Josh Downs.
well, as far as Pittman, it's more like I mean this is all looking towards 2025 and the projection I have in my brain is him being overtaken by
Okay.
Mr. Downs.
I would be
Whether,
down with that.
yeah, I know, but whether the quarterback situation, like the quarterback situation is what it is. If it's AR or if it's Daniel, it's not a great situation. But either way, I think the youth movement in the receiving core will start, and it'll be Mr. Downs and Mr. Warren, but
And
mostly
maybe
Jonathan
AD
Taylor.
Mitchell.
Probably not
Tyler,
AD Mitchell, but
thoughts
Yeah,
taking over the number two role?
it's actually going to talk about AD Mitchell in just a second.
How are we going to talk about AD Mitchell in just a second? How does that come up
Well,
naturally?
do you want me to go or no?
Is it going to be relevant to what we're talking about in a few minutes?
It's going to be relevant about who I'm talking about.
How? Okay, I'll go here with Keon Coleman. I don't think he's a very good football player. He's not very fast. I don't think he's a good route runner, and I don't think that the Bills are going to have a number one target that that they did with Diggs. Like the offense has been one of the best in the NFL the last 2 years without Diggs. So I don't have anything. Sorry, last year without Diggs. I forgot that last year was his first year not there. Was one of the best in the NFL without Diggs. I don't think they're going to just force someone into a role where they get fed targets. I think they're just going to spread the ball out, use everybody in their specific pockets of their strengths. And I don't think Keon Coleman has enough strengths to be a target hog. So I think in the way that you guys are talking about Deontay Johnson, I think he'll have spike weeks where he's a good matchup. He has some deep plays, big plays that lead to scores. But I also think there's gonna be a lot of weeks where he has like 3 targets for one catch or something like that, or maybe he has got a one catch for 2 yards and a touchdown that I just don't see the value. Like there are other young receivers that I'd much rather have in his price range than him. So, not a Keon Coleman fan myself.
in other words, you don't like his situation because the Bills are a wide receiver by committee.
No, I don't like the player. So I don't think that he's going to demand targets in a situation where he needs to step up to get more targets.
That's true. I'm not very high on Coleman either, mostly because see now I don't know these stats, but I do know he didn't have a good separation score in college, and if that's your calling card, then the majority of the time it doesn't translate well if you're just like a sorry, if 50-50 ball catchers, that's what he was. If that's your calling card, that doesn't translate as well to the NFL. So with him not being I can't say he's not fast because that gauntlet drill that you do at the combine, he had the fastest tracking miles per hour. It was just his 40 time that was slow, which is which is weird. But yeah, with him not being able to separate very well and being a 50-50 ball guy, he's already probably going to get a lower target volume just on that role alone. And then you add in that uh, Josh really spread the ball around without that true wide receiver one, and they still stayed where they were, then yeah, he's just he's all right. It's just the difference between him and Deontay Johnson is they're still unknown with Coleman, which is why he's kind of intriguing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, so neither of us like Keon Coleman. Tyler's on an island again. And let's get into some AD Mitchell discourse. Tyler, why is Matthew Golden overrated? Savon's wide
Okay.
receiver one in the class.
Is that actually true, Cevan?
not counting Travis Hunter.
Gosh, Cevan. Okay. Well, Matthew Golden is someone who I felt pretty strongly about. And usually when you feel pretty strongly about a rookie, it's because you like him. But I'm quite the opposite with Matthew Golden. I am not a fan of Matthew Golden. At the combine, his athleticism score ranked ninth among wide receivers. He had 1 year at Texas. He was at Houston before and transferred to Texas, where he was just short of 1,000 yards. So great college season, but he did it for 1 year. And I know in college sometimes that's all you need. But I think the big thing to talk about with Matthew Golden is that 4.29 40-yard time. And I just I get pretty nervous about putting a lot of stock into 40 times because I don't think that's realistic in how the NFL works. I mean, how often is he running a straight line unhindered? That's pretty rare. So I don't necessarily put a lot of stock in the 40-yard time myself. And with the Packers, the big thing was with them this draft this is their first wide receiver drafted the first round since 2000 whatever.
Two, I
And
believe.
okay, yeah, great. And I do think there's a world where Matthew Golden kind of gets lost in the shuffle of wide receivers. I mean, maybe Dontavian Wicks comes on a little bit more. We saw Jaden Reed show some really good flashes last year. And so, especially like this year, I get nervous about how many targets he's actually gonna be able to garner. Fantasy Pros has his projection as 855 receiving yards with 56 and a half receptions, and I could not be lower on those than I am. I do think there's an AD Mitchell year in his
Oh
range of
boy.
outcomes. And that's not that crazy to happen. I mean, we've seen first round wide receivers bust almost immediately. Quentin Johnston, whatever. I just Matthew Golden had one good year at college, and his main skill is being fast. And I don't think that screams success to me. And so I think he's overrated. I don't think he was worthy of a first round rookie pick either, quite honestly. But I, I'm really low on Matthew Golden myself.
Savan,
Ki- Yeah,
briefly give us a contrary argument there.
I'm just gonna ask a question real quick, Tyler, for you. Do you
Mhm.
think do you think this stat line is possible from um Golden?
Okay.
59 receptions,
hmm
638 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
Uh, the receptions, no. The yards and the touchdowns, yes.
Okay, well, those numbers were the combine 40-time breaker Xavier Worthy, um,
Okay. Sure.
which his calling card, all he did was run in a straight line, also
Okay.
at Texas.
Okay, now
Um,
read John Ross's stats.
can I find him? Let's see.
I'm joking. Don't read John Ross's stats. You that I mean, sure. Go,
Okay,
yeah.
I'll jump in here before this devolves into something less intelligent. I am with Tyler here. I'm not a huge Matthew Golden fan. Analytically, his profile was terrible in terms of his production for first round wide receivers, one of the lowest in recent memory. He goes to a situation in the Packers where they don't, I don't see him as a dominant number one wide receiver, which is what they need. They have a lot of guys that are, you know, good supplemental pass catchers to kind of support the offense around Tucker Kraft, of course. Like there's a lot of guys that can do that, but I don't think he's someone that's going to go out there and demand 100 targets in his rookie year. So I just don't think the situation is there. I don't think the player is there. I would not. I agree with Tyler. I would not have taken him in the first round. If I was a Packers fan, maybe that changes, but to me, not someone that I was looking to take with my pick. So definitely
It
closer to
just
Tyler here.
it felt like a forced pick by the Packers, in my opinion. You have Josh Jacobs saying they need a wide receiver one, and then everyone's been, mocking a wide receiver to them for the past 5 years in the first round. So it's like they finally do it. Just kind of feels like a forced pick there, in my opinion.
Well, it was better than the
Can,
Cowboys taking him at number 12, which is where everybody had him going, thankfully.
Yeah.
real quick,
Savan.
since John Ross got brought up,
Oh my God.
ki- do you guys know the last year John Ross appeared in a game?
2019.
I was going to say the
Read
same thing.
last year he appeared in a game. Before that, it was 2021. So obviously you guys didn't. You might as well just take a guess what team John Ross appeared in a game for last year.
He
Uh,
appeared in a game last year.
He has stats last year.
You
is
just
it
said 2021.
No,
before
Tyler said
that?
2021.
No,
Oh,
no, no. Savan
Oh
said
yeah, yeah, yeah,
before last year's
yeah,
2021.
yeah.
I'll guess the Titans.
Okay, great guess.
I feel like I vaguely remember his name, but I don't have any
Same.
remembrance of what team he was on.
Okay.
Eagles.
So yes, the
Oh,
Eagles.
I
So,
nailed it.
so
Wow.
John Ross wore number 38 for the Eagles last year. He appeared in one
Oh,
game. He had two targets, one reception for 6 yards.
Was it the last game of the year when Pickett was playing?
That's a great question. It was week 4,
Oh wow.
which is random. Um,
okay.
but John Ross stats, his best year was 28 reception for 500 yards.
Again, Matthew Golden right there.
All right, I guess only time will tell. I think
Yep.
they did have a need for someone to potentially be a difference maker. They notably rotate the receivers because they have a bunch of wide receiver twos. Now maybe they just added another one and it doesn't change anything. But I mean, being the only wide receiver invested in the first round, no other pass catchers have a financial investment yet. So
I had mentioned the Cowboys. Like, I feel like he'd be a more attractive option if he had gone to the Cowboys and he was
Yeah.
like the number two to CeeDee Lamb as opposed to like trying to be the number one for a team where he may not be it. Like I feel like
yeah,
he'd probably have more fantasy
Totally
appeal in
agree.
that situation.
I
Totally
definitely
agree.
agree. The situation matters a lot with rookies, obviously. But yeah, the Cowboys would definitely have been a better fit,
Which is
assuming
which
they
is
don't
interesting.
still trade for Pickens.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, which is interesting too, because like you think about someone last year like Ladd, where it was like, oh wow, Herbert's going to be throwing him passes. Who else there is going to catch pass? Like the situation was huge for him. Like if he went to a crowded team, he wouldn't have had as much hype, I think, as he did. But he went to a team where it was wide open. We were all in on him. And here, Golden's like, there's no one there that's really stepped up in the receiver room, and we're like, oh, he'd be more attractive as a number two option. But
I
I think that's
I'm
interesting.
I'm gonna call you out on that real quick
Hmm.
because you just said we were all in on Ladd, and you
No,
very
no, no, no,
notably,
no, no. I'm saying that was a major positive for him that was discussed. I was not in on Ladd at his price last year with the people that were going around him. I was just
okay,
saying when he was discussed, that was discussed as a huge positive. There's really no one else there to catch passes. Herbert was quarterback, that type of stuff.
I think
okay,
I think the example that's akin to the Cowboys would be like JJ and Jordan Addison. Like
Hmm.
he would be a good Jordan Addison. That
Agreed on that.
also
That's a good comp.
accounts for like a high volume passing offense like the Vikings or
Hmm.
Cowboys.
Agreed. Okay. Droppable. James,
wait. Sorry, I
what?
just thought, go back real quick. I thought of one more thing. I just last second could Matthew Golden's comp career-wise be like a Darnell Mooney? Because they're very similar in stature. They're speed guys, they're deep threats. And Mooney showed in Chicago he had one.
Well, you're cutting out there, but yeah, sure.
Agreed
Sorry.
on Darnell
Darnell.
Mooney. Droppable. Tyler and I both have Jameis Winston, QB3 for the Giants. Don't see any scenario where he starts. And even when he does play, questionable fantasy football asset. So for me, the droppable one was pretty easy. Tyler, do you have any other thoughts on Jameis?
Yeah, Cevan and I were debating this last night, and he's like, "Oh, if the thing is if Russ gets benched, I don't see what the Giants would ever gain in starting Jameis over Jackson Dart." And that's what Savan was trying to tell me is like Jameis is has a path to be the backup. And I disagreed with Savan there. It's like if they bench Russ, I feel like they're bringing in Dart. So I think Jameis is just going to be an eternal backup in New York. And
Yeah.
I know they paid him, but I I think you're totally fine to drop him if you want someone else on the
I
wire.
I think if Jameis isn't starting week one, meaning you Russ is either hurt or he somehow beats out Russ, he's not going to start a game in New York. Like you
Yeah,
said, I agree with you. There's nothing to gain from playing him if Russ gets benched because the Giants regime probably coming close to their last legs and Dart's their last hope. If he comes in and shows promise, that easily burns him or gains them another year to say,
yeah,
oh, well, Dart looked promising. At the very least, we can run on that. Whereas if Jameis comes in, it's like what are you gaining from that? It's not like the Giants
Yeah.
are trying to win the Super Bowl this year, so
Hmm.
yeah, pretty easily draw. If he gets traded, like to the Saints, there was some talk about that. Then he becomes interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, at this point, rostering a QB3 on a bad team is not worth it. Now to the
My
Jahan Dotson discourse. Or did you have with Jameis thoughts, Savan?
Yeah, I was gonna talk about Jameis real quick. My argument for Jameis being the backup, because I don't think he's gonna win the starting job, but he didn't get like what typical backup quarterback money is. He got a bump up from that. But to me, it depends on when the quarterback switches, because we all know the Giants have a brutal schedule, um, and they don't have a very good team outside of their defensive line. And so the way the way I see it, he's
Say
like
it.
no. So he's like a spark quarterback, right? And so hypothetically, let's just say it's still the first half of the season and they've won one or two games. They're 1-6, 2-5, whatever, 1-7. Then Jameis just seems like the most likely outcome to me because it's still early enough in the season to get a spark and not lose the locker room. Like you said, the coaches are Dable and Shane are probably coaching for their jobs this season. And so to me, it would just depend. Also, there's the factor that Dart isn't ready. He only had one real positive college year and openly admitted he never used a cadence or called a play in the huddle before. So there's the world where he's just not ready to play entirely. And Jameis is, again, he's like the perfect spark quarterback that you put in if you need a spark. And so I don't know. To me, he's not droppable until Russ is benched and they decide who the quarterback is or gets hurt or whatever. Um, but yeah, I can get into some. Or you guys have any?
No, I don't want to talk about Jameis anymore. The QB3
He's.
for a bad team. I don't want to talk about him anymore.
It might just be me wanting to see him in Neighbors.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't just be me. I think everybody would want to see that, but that's probably
Wouldn't you
where
want to
Dave
see for
is as well.
Neighbors the long-term future that's going to be throwing in passes, hopefully for the next decade, be good rather than Jameis, who is like 2 games?
Again, it depends, but I'd probably want to save those 3 games for the last 3 games. Actually, no, just give me Jameis, okay? Anyways,
Okay.
I'll get into
More
Jahan.
Jahan Dotson discourse. Let's try to make this one quick.
So Jahan, obviously, he had top 15 draft capital from the Commanders, and then right after his year two, they got a whole new regime. And when it looked like it was literally only Terry McLaurin, the Commanders decided to ship him out to the Eagles, where again, Eagles low passing volume. He's their third wide receiver, but he was their fifth target earner while playing 17 games last year. He earned two more targets than Grant Calcaterra, having 32 targets on the season. Um, he was two targets away from being the sixth target leader on the team. And guaranteed Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Goddard, and Barkley will have more targets than him. And if you're only getting 3,000 yards total passing, there's just not enough to go around. I know he's got the draft capital. He's going into a contract year. Uh, to me, he's not going to be in a position to earn like a big payday like we see from like Gabe Davis. He's not going to be able to do that. And so after this year, he's just going to be on 1 year deals bouncing around, and you might as well just get ahead of it and drop him now. Any pushback, or do you guys think he's rosterable because of his draft capital?
I think you're
Tyler's
putting
a
too
notable
much.
hater of draft capital.
No, I think you're putting too much stock in draft capital that was like 3 years ago.
No, I'm not. I'm
I think
saying to
you
drop
are.
him.
No, no, okay, but my pushback isn't because of draft capital. It's because if AJ Brown or Devontae Smith get hurt, I think
Which
he is
which
rosterable. Is
which
rosterable.
AJ Brown did get hurt. You keep talking, I'm gonna look up what games he
So
didn't
did
play.
Devontae Smith
I,
last year as well,
I,
actually.
okay. I mean, sure, you drop him if you want. I'm not saying he's like super rosterable. I'm just saying Jameis is more droppable.
Well, weeks 2 through 4 last year, when AJ Brown had the hamstring injury, he played 80% of the snaps or more, and he had 1, 2, and 3 points.
Yes.
I don't want to talk about Jahan Dotson anymore because he's probably not worth talking about.
Real
Uh,
quick. I'm going to. Week 18 was the only week he had above 4 points. He had one, two, three, four. He had five gooses. He had one, two, three, four, 5 games less than two. He had 16 points in week 18 where Kenny Pickett played, no AJ, no Devontae, no Barkley. So his season high was 4 targets, and that was the week AJ Brown didn't play. He had 2 catches for 11 yards. Do you
Okay.
guys, I, do you guys think he's rosterable? That's all I want to
no,
know.
there's
Okay.
other guys on the waiver wire I'd pick up over him.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably not.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Malachi Corley.
No, definitely not him. Not again.
Sorry,
Okay,
sorry, sorry.
moving
I
off
would take
droppable.
No, I would take Corley over Dotson.
At least he's still more of a question mark at the very least
Yes.
than Dotson. Like even if there's a 99% chance he's nothing, I don't think there's any chance Dotson is something. So at the very least, you have some more unknown with him. Quarterback room, a very solid room overall. We talked a lot about Hurts already, talked about Winston, have not touched on Jared Goff at all because we talked about Milrow as well extensively, I think, in our rookie draft recap. Um, we've had some fun discussions about Jared Goff recently. Cevan, what are your thoughts on the quarterback room here?
Uh, I I think this is almost a perfect starting room as far as like an ideal realistic quarterback room. You have the rushing upside with Jalen Hurts, and then you have the perennial 4,000 yard passer with Jared Goff. Very solid up top. We just touched on Jameis Winston, whether he's rosterable or not, he's not startable. Same with Jalen Milrow. Only has upside because of his rushing ability, but with their investment in Darnold, I know Darnold still has to earn it. Milrow, at best, to me, is kind of like what Fields was doing last year as far as 2025, where they just get him in the red zone or in obvious rushing situations. I like Milrow's game for fantasy. I just don't think he's ever going to pan out because you have to be a consistent passer in the league, and he really just didn't show it in college. He's my type of quarterback. He's just not good, and he didn't get good draft capital. Um, yeah. So
Yep. Miller didn't
starters,
get good draft capital.
what?
You're
He's a
saying
third
Miller?
rounder.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good draft capital.
not for a quarterback.
Yeah, quarterback's a little bit different.
Okay, sure.
No, not sure. If you're
Okay.
if you're not a first round quarterback, that's like the lowest success rate position
Well,
in the
yeah.
league. So
Tyler, off the top of your
yeah.
head, how many NFL starting quarterbacks are drafted outside the first round?
Do you know this answer?
I know the general number. I know the area that it is.
I'd say like 10.
No, it's like 4 or 5.
Okay, that's fine.
But yeah, that's all pretty much from me.
Tyler, your thoughts on the room as a whole while I figure out how many starting quarterbacks weren't taken in the first round.
Yeah, I really like the room. I think this is the strength of Sandy's team with, yeah, Hurts MVP candidate for his team, and Goff is really consistent there. And, he's doesn't have a quarterback right now, at least, that's starting every week as like a QB3. You could start for injuries or buys, but if if he needs to get there, maybe he acquires someone. But I think for what he has now, it's great, and I think it's really well rounded. So that's what I have.
I'm
Yeah.
just sorry. I'm looking through it now. Uh, can you name the only bona fide AFC starter? We're excluding the Browns here because we don't know who's starting. The only bona fide AFC starting quarterback who was not drafted in the first round.
The
Ooh.
only AFC one
There's only one quarterback in the AFC
is
right
it
now that was not
Gino's
drafted in the first round.
Gino?
It is Geno, correct.
Oh,
Every other quarterback in the AFC that started locked and loaded was drafted in the first round.
and then Purdy, obviously.
Yeah, and Hurts was a second rounder, and Dak.
And Russ.
Yeah, Russ was a third rounder.
T yes, technically he counts.
He
Okay, so
does.
yeah, so like I said, 4 or 5 is
And
that.
two of them were over a decade ago.
So yeah, third round draft capital for a quarterback is not the same as third round draft capital for a running back or a wide receiver.
Okay.
Because if it was, then maybe Cevan would have taken him at the 109, like he took a third round running back.
Yes,
I have
exactly.
no new thoughts here on the quarterback room. I think Savan put it well. You have like the both best of both worlds with a rushing upside elite fantasy quarterback in Hurts, and then a really good quarterback in Goff that frankly was probably playing at his ceiling last year. Like how many touchdowns he threw, how much they were scoring, how they were able to score so much on so many bad teams. I think this is about the ceiling of what you'll see from him, but regardless, back end quarterback one, high end quarterback two that you feel really confident is going to be out there for every week that isn't his bye. So and then Milrow, I'm a little bit higher on, but again, like Savan said, elite fantasy option the second he gets into elite fantasy upside that could become a great option is if he ever were to play, whether that be injury or, I mean, find it pretty hard to believe Darnold gets benched until at the very earliest late in the year if that were to occur. But regardless, uh, lacks depth because again, if Hurts or Goff go down in week one, he's going to be in real trouble. But the starters are great and a really high upside option in Milrow. So solid room overall. Passing the quarterback room here onto the running backs. Similar to the quarterbacks, perhaps a very top-heavy room. Uh, Bijan Robinson, we already discussed. Uh, Elite fantasy option at the position, finished top three last year, 23 years old, and then supported as in his hero role by David Montgomery, who missed part of the end of last year, but still was able to finish as a really solid mid to high-end RB2. And then after that, just kind of a mixed bag of players between Jerome Ford, who's now suddenly in a very crowded backfield, Tyler's legend, Justice Hill, but coming off a contract extension, the recently signed Nick Chubb with the Houston Texans, and then Will Shipley, now the direct handcuff to Saquon Barkley. Tyler, let's start with you since you were the Bijan guy in slide one. What are your thoughts on the running back room here?
Yeah, it is the weakness of Sandy's team, I think, because outside of Bijan, there's significant question marks. I am going to bring up Ben Johnson here pretty naturally. David Montgomery in the 2 years with him has had 12 and 13 rushing touchdowns respectively, and that's where so much of Montgomery's value has come from. And perhaps a little bit different look offense this year. I'm a little iffy to believe that he'll have rushing touchdown numbers that reach quite those heights. So, as Savan and I were talking a little bit last night, and I think Montgomery, like Savan said, will would be a better running back three on a team and have someone else in that running back two spot there. So I think Montgomery is just he'll have value this year, but in my mind, I do think there's a drop off, especially with him, kind of inching towards that age of 30. So I'm a little bit worried about him, and then everyone else after that, they're just kind of rollbacks. Like I said, like I've said before, Justice Hill he had his weeks last year, but they were hard to predict. And I'm sure a lot of these guys, like I think Ford, Hill, and Chubb will all have weeks where they're relevant and they produce, but who the hell knows what week that's going to be and what week it's not going to be. And, one injury like to Montgomery or Robinson, this backfield is just a total anchor and really hurts the the points scored for that week. So I'm pretty out on the backfield as a whole. I think there's way too many question marks and not enough pieces that you can, maybe rely on.
Pretty negative there, Savan. How do you feel? Negative as well?
Yeah, definitely negative. Bijan, I flirted with putting as a best value, just where he's going now. He's arguably the dynasty t running back one. He's elite. After that, yeah, David Montgomery. With the departure of Ben Johnson, I think that negatively affects him and Jameson Williams. Irrelevant Jameson and Williams point, but to me, those are the two that get affected the most. As well as with the three new interior offensive linemen. I don't know if they're going to be able to just ram it up the middle with him as effectively as at least. And then you add in the two injuries he's had over the last years. I know injuries aren't predictable, like we love to say, but
Who's we?
we, as in you,
Good.
yes. But yeah, David Montgomery getting older, has been injured the last couple of years, losing linemen, losing Ben Johnson. He's more of a RB. Yeah, I'd want him to be my RB3. And then you get into the last four. All four of these guys to me are an injury away. Ford might be two injuries away now. Justice Hill, I think he's an injury away from splitting touches. Um, Nick Chubb, I don't think he is relevant unless Mixon is out. Then Will Shipley has to have Barkley out, and if that happened, Will Shipley was a pass. He's more profiled as a pass catcher, and so I don't even think he would get many carries, or he would be splitting at the least with probably a veteran they'd have to bring in. But not a huge fan of the room. I do like the Hero RB build. It would just be better built if you had a better team. Um, I'm a fan of the Hero RB build, but usually that comes with better players at other positions. So kind
Wow.
of poorly executed there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm just a little bit higher on Montgomery than you guys. I agree with your points. Like probably same thing with Goff, which is worth mentioning as well. Starting a quarterback and a running back from the same team is not typically an ideal strategy. But at the same time, like I think even if he doesn't run as pure with the touchdowns, what Savant said at the end there is kind of important. Like Bijan is so good that it makes up for Monty maybe being a little bit thinner on the RB2 side. Like maybe not your ideal second running back, but when you have such a good RB1, it kind of evens out to have a solid room. But yeah, overall, just a really thin room. You definitely could see him needing to make a move early in the season for another running back because you just don't feel comfortable with any of these four bench guys putting into your lineup. And as mentioned, Montgomery missed time both the last 2 years and is 28. Bijan carries a heavy workload in that offense. So yeah, overall, really solid starting two and really weak after that.
Yeah, touch. I was gonna say touching on that one more time. Usually, like in a hero RB build, which this obviously I guess kind of is, you'd want obviously you have Bijan, and then you just want a few guys that at least have a role and that you're comfortable putting into your lineup. And so like if Bijan goes down, there is not one person after Montgomery, obviously, that you can put in and like expect 5 points, in my opinion. I don't know who I would pick. I'd probably pick Justice Hill. Um, I don't know. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, definitely a team that could be making a move early in the year, but we'll see. Wide receivers, per usual, a lot of names here. We've touched on a lot of them already, but a couple names that I wanted to mention that we have not touched on. Rashid Shaheed came out firing last year with Derek Carr, with the Saints coming out, putting up 40 in the first 2 weeks. Cooled down after that, but overall still had a clear role in the Saints offense. Adam Thielen, who has been mentioned in multiple episodes already, but not because we were talking about Adam Thielen. Still a valuable piece. Was a top 30 wide receiver last year by points per game. Dontavian Wicks bumped down the depth chart along with Romeo Dobbs, continuing his Packers trend. Three Packers wide receivers on the roster. So yeah, just a couple of names we didn't mention there, along with the obvious ones we've already talked about with AJ Brown, Keon Coleman, Michael Pittman, among others. So, Cevan, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the much deeper wide receiver room here in terms of quantity of names? Or is the
Ye-
quality any better?
Yeah, no, it's just quantity for me. Obviously you have AJ Brown. There's no dispute there. After that, uh, it's really a bunch of guys as far as Coleman, Pittman, Shaheed, and Matthew Gold, or maybe not Matthew Gold. I'll just touch on Coleman, Pittman, and Shaheed for me. Those are guys I'd want to be putting either in my last flex spot or like first off the bench type guys. And the, those are guys that you're going to be counting on being your wide receiver two or locked in at your flex. Um, if you're starting Brown, Coleman, Pittman, and Shaheed, to me, there's only one more name that you can confidently put in your lineup. To me, that's Matthew Golden. You guys can disagree. Um, but yeah, to me, it's just a bunch of guys that you're gonna have to start that preferably I would like them to be bench pieces or depth. So I I honestly hate the room. AJ Brown salvages it a little bit, but as a whole, it is piss poor at best.
Wow. Strong words there. Tyler, do you agree with the piss poor label here from Cevan?
Mostly, I think it's the way I think of it. I think this room is just kind of throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks. And I don't think a lot is sticking this year, in my opinion. So I think it'll just be so frustrating trying to predict who's going to have a week and who's not with this room, especially with three of them being Packers receivers. So I think it will be inconsistent. I think there might be boom weeks, but I think those would be hard to come by, and you have to be really dialed in to try and nail those matchups that will maximize your points scored.
Yeah. No disagreement here from me. Uh, to be fair, I did want to bring up with AJ Brown, um, elite wide receiver one, the player. I'm not sure that the volume will be there again. Like if you look, even when he was playing last year, only wide receiver 14 points per game, which is was way down from what he was the first 2 years with the Eagles, where he was 1,400, 1,500 yards. So I think for me, he has the anchor potential, but yeah, after that, just a lot of players that you would feel more comfortable if they were your 4 or 5 than having to, rely on Coleman, rely on Pittman, rely on Shaheed. I feel great if they were the last option instead of all of those guys being thrust into the lineup. And then again, you add in the factor that can't start two of the three Packers guys at once, so you're limited to only one of those guys at a time. Throw in Tucker Kraft, and maybe you can't start any of them. You can only start one of those four likely in the same week. Um, I'm higher on Deontay Johnson than you guys. I think Thielen will have some usable weeks, but yeah, just overall, I agree. The quantity is there. Hoping something sticks out, hoping a Packers pass catcher pops up, hoping that Pittman bounces back, hoping Coleman takes another step. There's just not a lot of guarantees in this room, which is scary. So,
Yeah.
tight ends, three names. We've talked about two of them, and then Luke Lachey, notable Iowa Hawkeye. Does anybody have anything else to say here on the tight end room other than Tucker Kraft world domination coming this year?
I think you can start two of these three most weeks. Uh, I think Gesicki should be in flex consideration each week for Sandy.
Flex consideration,
Definitely. A tight end
putting him in.
Definitely.
premium and tight end premium
Okay, bold. But Tucker
can
Kraft doesn't have
just
top five upside. But Mike Gesicki is a flex option. Sorry,
there's
Mike Gesicki is a flex option for him is a different point.
correct.
Okay, that's
With
fair.
like and I said consideration, not necessarily starting him from me, but it's like consider him versus Shaheed. I think that's valid.
Hmm. Fair enough. Savan, anything else from you?
Yeah, no, that's a great point from Tyler. Gesicki definitely should be in consideration every week to take up one of those flex spots. Um, and then yeah, Tucker Kraft should be, in my opinion, a lineup lock. Well, I mean, if this is your room, yeah, he's gotta. But I love Kraft this year. And Gesicki is a solid tight end too with upside if T. Higgins goes down just in general. He's got the extension. He's on a great offense, tied to a good quarterback. So pretty solid room in my opinion.
Yep. Nothing more to add here from me.
Or
Big
even
fan of the
is
top.
Lachey on the Texans depth chart? Would it be like three?
I have no
The
idea.
Schultz, Quintanamario.
They have Stover as well.
Yeah, he might not even make the team, so we'll see.
On to our hot takes, Savan. AJ Brown finishes as the wide receiver one overall. Hasn't happened to this point in his career, despite getting close on a number of occasions. Savan, why is this the year AJ Brown could finish as the wide receiver one overall?
Yeah, without going on my 3 minute spiel,
Thank you.
just going into 2025, uh, he's just someone I'm super high on. I'm not gonna get into numbers or anything. Everybody knows he's an alpha wide receiver one, despite the low volume. It's really just, is he going to play all 17 games? If he plays all 17 games, I have no doubt he's going to be the target leader. Uh, he's going to have multiple games over 150 yards. He's just a big play guy and he scores touchdowns. So as long as the health is there for him, uh, he's going. It, I'll stamp this. If he plays 17 games, he will be the wide receiver one.
Okay. It has been stamped. Tyler, any thoughts on this?
I like it. Um, it's it's a good hot take, just solid hot take. I don't have
Is it
much to
even that
say.
hot? I mean, if we're talking about AJ
I,
Brown here,
I think it's just hot enough. I like one overall over the field is I'd say that's pretty hot, especially in a lower volume passing offense.
so we're talking about a guy who was wide receiver seven and wide receiver five and wide receiver six in his 2 years prior to last year with the Eagles, where he was almost at
But
1,500 yards in both years. Is it
I
even
mean,
hot? Is now the hot take? Hot
Yeah,
take. I
no,
don't think
because
Savant's hot take
I
is
think
hot.
they
that
didn't have Barkley though those 2 years.
I was also gonna say the top spots are like it gets really hard to climb even a spot at those top few spots.
That's fair.
Like
Especially with
like
Jamar Chase existing, it's pretty
yeah,
hard
like
for anyone else to be there.
Jamar and Jefferson are gonna be there most years. So,
Fair enough. My hot take, Deontay Johnson is in his top three highest
oh,
scoring wide receivers this year. To be fair,
uh,
again, we're talking about his top three wide receivers. So if you clearly assume AJ Brown is ahead of him, he has to finish ahead of two of, wait, he has to finish. Like I think there's a chance he's in the realm of the Pittmans, the Shaheeds, the Colemans, the Thielens. I mean, he only needs to outscore like two of those four guys there. Wait, it'd be three of those four guys. I think it's possible Deontay Johnson has a role in an offense that's going to be losing a lot, that's going to be throwing a lot because they have to, and he has earned targets over his career. As I've already said in my sleepers section, you can be fast asleep on him, but I think there's a chance this is possible for Deontay Johnson.
I just think there's bound to be turnover in the quarterback room that he'll just struggle to even get a rhythm going with any quarterback before they switch to the next one.
I think
But
it's
this is a
possible.
hot take, so
Well, yeah, I don't like. I don't think anyone really knows who the week one starter is. I think we all kind of assume slash
Does
hope it's Flacco, and Flacco is probably the best for his fantasy prospects this year. But at the end of the day, it's more about the opportunity he has within the wide receiver room and the deficits they will be facing consistently, and the lack of depth in the existing wide receiver room on Sandy's team as well is part of this take
does
as well.
Does this fact did this factor into your take? So while you guys were talking, I looked up Deontay Johnson news, and the first four articles are yesterday. Deontay Johnson came out and predicted Kenny Pickett will be the starting quarterback.
I'd probably take back my hot take then. I don't think Kenny Pickett's supporting a top three wide receiver on. I'm just kidding. Yeah. I don't think the quarterback really matters for this take. Not that obviously there are quarterbacks on the team who would be better for his fantasy prospects, but it was more just a comment on the opportunity he has and the lack of depth in Sandy's room that I think is possible. Especially
I
if you guys are fast asleep on him.
No, I just don't see because obviously you have Judy, you have Njoku, right?
Hmm.
Uh, I think we all would agree Deontay won't
Agreed.
out target either of them. Okay.
Hmm.
And then you have the
Probably.
upside of Tillman, Jamari Thrash. You still have Harold Fannin.
Big fan.
Um, and don't they have another receiver that I'm forgetting about? Maybe not, but I don't know. Deontay Johnson, I think, is more likely to not make the roster than be in the top three for him.
That's fair.
This is very hot in my opinion.
Well, I had to bump up the spice after your take to kind of level us out here. So I'm a Deontay Johnson fan this year. Tyler, Jalen Milrow, noted supporter from Cevan, starts games for Sandy's team this year. Uh, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think this is that spicy because if he gets in the lineup, he's probably starting for Sandy. But at the same time, is he playing because Sam Darnold is hurt, or is he playing because he replaced Sam Darnold? Give us some more details.
Okay, okay. I probably should have clarified that. I think I more so meant I didn't want this to be a Sam Darnold tape, but I think in thinking of this, it was that Sam Darnold would get benched in favor of Jalen Milrow at some point during the season. But again, I don't want to make a Sam Darnold take. So I'll agree that this probably is the hottest take. I probably could have done a little bit better here, but the whole thinking was just Sam Darnold, I'm sure we all watched the end of the season last year and how rough he looked and how 2022 Sam Darnold he looked. Just he was seeing ghosts out there. He only signed a 3-year deal at age 28, so it's not like the Seahawks have committed super long term to Sam Darnold here. And we just saw last year how the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins, and then when he was really struggling, they turned it over to Penix. I know Penix had the first round draft capital, top 10 pick, whatever. But I think Jalen Milrow is such an intriguing option for fantasy and also NFL teams because of that rushing element to his game. And, you know, I'm sure the Seahawks are hoping that maybe they can dial in the passing skills just a bit to make him a dual threat quarterback for them. And so I think if Darnold is really struggling to start the year, fans will be loud about wanting to hear or wanting to see Milrow play. And like you said, Reed, if Milrow is playing with that Russian upside, you'll probably want him in your lineup. So I'd imagine even if Goff is healthy, maybe Jalen Milrow starts a game over Goff for Sandy
Mhm.
against a weaker defense. So,
Yep.
yeah, probably not my hottest of takes here. But I was when I did think of it, I more so meant in the vein that Sam Darnold would get
Hmm.
benched than injury. So I guess I'll throw that caveat on here, and maybe
Sorry.
that makes it a little bit better. But
Yeah. No, I have two comments here. First one, my comment was not to say this was not a fun take. It's a very fun take. I was just
yeah,
saying
no, you're good.
that Jalen Milrow is really fun if he ends up starting for the Seahawks.
Yes.
So I was not criticizing the take. It's a very fun take. But my contrary, where I am going to beat your drum here. If I remember two
Gosh.
episodes ago, you were beating the drum for Cooper Kupp, and now you're saying that their drop
Oh
back quarterback
my.
they just signed is going to get benched for a guy who doesn't throw as well. So how are you in simultaneously on Cooper Kupp, but also saying there's a real possibility Sam Darnold gets benched?
I think both can be true. I'm really honest. I mean, we can have a longer Sam Darnold discussion as off air or something, but I think there's a large range of outcomes for Darnold. It's really hard to just think about his last season and how successful it was, but also then think about those last two games and just how awful they looked and how, like I said, how 2022 Darnold he looked. Uh, so I, I still like Cooper Cup, and I think Sam Darnold can be poor, but Cooper Cup can still be fine. I mean, we've seen that. So, I mean,
Have we seen that?
Drake London was still good last year with Cousins, no?
Yeah, he was good with no. I'm saying if Sam Darnold were to come out, then Cooper Kupp loses a lot of value, whether he was playing well or
Oh,
not, because if
yes.
Milrow comes in, they're not going to be throwing the ball very much.
Agreed.
And even in the event that Sam Darnold does get benched, London was not fantastic with Cousins. Like if you look, he only had one game over 20 points with Cousins, and that was that big
Sure.
game in like week 3 or 4. So like all I'm saying is save the slurping for another episode.
Okay. I think the chances that Darnold gets benched is low.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying like screaming for Jalen Milrow. while I was just saying Cooper Cup's going to be a GOAT or anything like that.
That's fair. Sivan, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, my only pushback on this take, and I don't know if this was a thought or maybe you didn't know, Mr. Tyler, but
Hmm.
I think we all can agree Jalen Milroe was not a good passer of the football as a prospect.
No.
And if in the event that Darnold got benched, I would assume they would want to keep developing Milroe on the side and instead turn to Drew Lock.
Oh my gosh. This is Jameis Winston Jackson Dart 2.0.
Yeah, I mean,
I will have a hot take here, and I will agree with Savan that I think it's a possibility that they end up going to Drew Lock, not necessarily because they want to continue to develop Jalen Milroe on the side, but because I think the Seahawks expect to be competitive. Whereas like in the Giants
Fair.
arena, they're coaching for their jobs in all likelihood, and winning games for them is not as important as Jackson Dart showing promise to buy them another year. Whereas in this
Fair.
case, the Seahawks not necessarily like a Super Bowl favorite, but expected to be competitive. And Drew Lock, potentially, I'm not saying he is, but potentially gives them a better shot to win now than
Sure.
Milroe does.
But I'm thinking if Darnold's complete ass, you got to imagine the Seahawks are losing a lot of ball games
Hmm.
in which they might be out of it and want to see what Miller has. But I take your point. It is different. Yeah, like you
Hmm.
said, the how competitive the team is definitely has plays a part.
Very much so. Drew Lock, the scorn of my season last year,
you can
haunts me to this
think
day.
you can you can blame Trent for fucking that up.
It's okay. Drew
You
Lock
know,
wouldn't have won me the game. I would have had to have played Jonnu as well. So if I lost because I started Flacco instead of Lock, then it would haunt me more. Now it's just like a mild nightmare.
you know who else Jalen Milroe would hurt is your
Don't
boy
say it. No, you're
KW3.
sleep. No, he would open running lanes for Kenneth Walker because they have
Uh,
to account for another runner. It's the same way Jonathan Taylor is better when Richardson plays because the defense has to account for 11 guys instead of 10 because the backup, Flacco wasn't a threat to run. So no, that helps Kenneth Walker. Everything helps Kenneth Walker.
allegedly.
We had to get a Kenneth Walker. I was going to bring it up in one way or another with this take, but I'm glad you did. Wrapping up here, season predictions, pretty grim here for all of us. Savan, you are the lowest, 15% playoff odds with just a 1% chance to be a top two team to, make the championship. Tyler a little bit higher than myself is the highest. So Savan, just give us kind of your wrap up overall thoughts on your low odds here for Sandy.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned this, but he got the first round bye last year. And so in my opinion, I
Savan,
don't
hey,
think
we're gonna pause because yours is a little fuzzy. We're gonna let your internet connection come back before we kick it back to you. Tyler, you give us your thoughts before we go back to Savan on the grim playoff odds again.
Yeah. I like I said, I think there's a big question, and Savan were and I were kind of debating what is and isn't startable depth or useful depth. And I think when looking at those rooms, there's a lot of depth there that just kind of is fluff. It's kind of nothing in my mind. And for a team that stays pretty consistent in terms of the roster construction, I I struggle to see where this team um, comes out like where his advantages, I guess, over other teams. I mean, tight end and quarterback are solid, but is his team are those position groups, notably better than most of the league? Probably not. So just everything is average to below average for me. But I mean, there is obviously enough talent here where a playoff run is possible for sure. So, not counting them out, this isn't a soft spot on the schedule or anything in my mind. Just maybe lacking some of the top end strength that, or not even the top end strength, the back end strength that some of these higher seeded or higher
Mm-hmm.
ranked teams have.
Mm-hmm. Savan, we'll try you again. Give us something.
yeah.
There we go. We're back.
All right, cool. So I don't think we mentioned it or maybe
Tough, tough
Lost me.
scene. Okay, Cevan, you're off again. I'll go here. I have pretty similar thoughts to Tyler. I think I'm a little bit higher. I have him in not in the tier as them because I agree with what they said, and I think the points they made were valid. That I think the depth is questionable, but the starting lineup as a whole, like, is a competitive starting lineup. So again, I'm not saying I have him as a playoff favorite. I have him, I believe, at number 10 in my power rankings. So, but I have him a tier above the maybe next year because I think again, if everything goes right, Monty continues to play well. Bijan continues to be an elite asset. Really solid quarterback room. Tucker Kraft, top five tight end. I think he has enough depth at wide receiver that something sticks. So for me, just a little bit higher than them overall, but again, not necessarily a favorite. And I agree with Tyler that I don't think there's any room that really gives him an advantage over the rest of the league. I just think he kind of holds his own in a lot of spots, and one or an injury somewhere could really kind of derail his season. Savannah, we're going to try one more time to go to you before we have to cut it out here. What do you got?
Okay. Are we good?
We're
Yep.
good for now.
Okay. So I was gonna say I don't know if we skimmed over it or maybe we talked about it, but uh Sandy was the 2 seed and got the bye last year. And I don't know if it was a situation where it was a lack of moves because he didn't really ship anybody out, but from it's real tough scenes going from the 2 seed to consensus, bottom half at least. As far as the championship odds being a top 2 seed, I got them at 1%. I don't see the vision. Playoffs, I know I have them in the maybe next year category. So, like both of you guys mentioned earlier, I suppose everybody has about a 50-50 chance, but to get to 7 wins, that could squeeze you in the playoffs, depending on a bunch of other factors. But I agree with Tyler from what he said earlier that I view his situation as more likely to um, be below that 7 win threshold. And so, um, yeah, maybe just a retool, reload this one year, and then flip your focus to 2026 because it's slim pickings out here, and we don't have room for you in the playoffs.
Very fair. Any closing thoughts here, whether it be on the team, the episode? I don't have anything else to add, so I'll flip it over to you guys for any closing thoughts.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
Tyler, you go.
it's just gonna say I don't think I have much more. I was just gonna say it's interesting contrasting this team with, where we were talking about Reed's team, Sean's team, Ian's team, just how, you know, I don't know. I just find it interesting I guess quality of players on the teams. I think this was a case where the starting lineup looks really good, and then everything else behind it, like we said, is just kind of meh. So it's interesting how we value. I'm really finding it interesting how we're valuing these depth bench pieces in these rankings. That's kind of where I'm at right now is the starting lineup's one thing, but what you have behind it really gives into, I guess, how I'm thinking about these teams.
Yeah, and for me, Sandy, if you are listening and if you made it this far into the video, please like and subscribe. Um, yeah, don't take this as us bashing your team. We're just giving our honest opinions. And even if we think your team sucks, if you don't, that's all that matters. You still got Bijan to watch. I know you like watching the Lions, so watching Monty get outsnapped by Gibbs is going to be just awesome this year. And yeah, maybe we'll see you next year in
I
2026.
I hope if he's listening to this that he starts answering his DMs because I need Tucker Kraft on my team, and if I can't get him to respond, it's gonna hard to be hard to get Tucker Kraft. So
Yeah,
if you're
maybe
listening to this, please respond to my DM.
maybe you can do a Kraft and Deontay Johnson deal and get that done.
Well, the difference is with my team, Deontay Johnson is a little bit lower on my wide receiver depth chart, believe it or not. So it makes it harder for him to be a sleeper on my team. But on his team, I love the sleeper value.
Fair enough.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you next week.